Hi, everyone. My name is Luke Boulay, and I'm the Government Affairs Manager for Professional Photographers of America. And today with me, I have Steve Tepp and David Newhoff from RightsClick. Um, I'll just let Steve take it away and then hand it off to David to introduce themselves.
Great. Thanks very much, Luke. Pleasure to be here. Thank you to you and to PPA. As you said, my name is Stephen Tepp. I am a copyright lawyer. I've been practicing copyright law for around 25 years now. I started my career as a staffer on the staff of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and then I went to the U.S. Copyright Office, where I worked for over 11 years. From there, I went into the private sector. I was chief IP counsel for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and then hung out my own shingle. And then just a couple of years ago, my friend David Newhoff and I started a company called RightsClick, which is specifically designed to help independent creators. But we'll come back to that in a minute.
Very good. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Luke, and thank you to BPA for having us here. My name is David Newhoff. I am not a lawyer. I do not practice law. I came to copyright advocacy about 10 years ago out of the creative universe as predominantly in film and video production, but as a creative director, writer, played a number of roles and wore a lot of hats in the creative universe, mostly in the New York City market. About 10 years ago, I got involved with advocacy right around the time of the SOPA PIPA debates, for those who remember. And by debate, I mean that kindly. I write a blog called The Illusion of More, which some of you may follow. It's followed by artists and policymakers and attorneys and copyright haters, of course. The majority of that blog comments on copyright matters, but other digital age issues. In 2020, I published a book about photography and copyright. Naturally, along the way, although I didn't study law, I've learned a lot about copyright law, to say the least, and made a number of colleagues in the industry, including Steve. And as he mentioned, we put our heads together and created this service called RightsClick, about which more in a few minutes.
Excellent. So yeah, could you give us the origin story?
Sure.
Sure.
I'll,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I'll take
David.
that. And I mean, it really started because, Steve and I had worked on a number of projects together. And as most people know, a lot of copyright conversation happens up here at the big companies and
Yep.
like who's suing who at the very high end, if you will, of the industry. But we're both very much aware that the independent creator really does not participate in the copyright system enough.
Right.
And the principle behind RightsClick is that that's not because they don't necessarily want to, and certainly not because independent creators don't benefit from copyright, but there are certain barriers to participating in the system. Big ones are time, and another one is understanding. And so RightsClick is really designed to be a software system that makes engaging with copyright registration and other functions fast, easy, something you can build into your workflow and begin to manage your copyrights just like any other business operation would, because after all, professionals are running businesses. Would you add anything to that, Steve?
Just that of all the independent creators who are disadvantaged by the complexity and time involved in the copyright registration system, none more so than professional photographers. The rules of the Copyright Office are very detailed, very strict. The interface for applying online is not user-friendly. They're trying to update it, but it's been taking years and it's still not clear how close they are.
Right.
We saw that and said we can do better. I've seen from the side of the Copyright Office how the system is just not working for independent creators, for photographers. And so we've built a system that makes it quick and easy to take control of your rights. And that's really what it's about, because taking control of your rights, registering your copyright is the key to having truly enforceable rights in a practical way.
Absolutely. And to that point, one of the requirements to access federal court or the Copyright Claims Board is registration. And there are a lot of time factors associated with when you register. I was wondering if you'd be able to go into some of those factors, Steve, briefly. I know it could be a bit of a rabbit hole, but there are some exceptional benefits to registering timely and before an infringement were to occur.
Absolutely. So maybe I'll spend a minute or two on why registration is important, and then David can talk about some of the Copyright Office rules that require photographers to go through so many hoops in order to submit those registration
Right,
applications. So, Luke, as you said, no US author can sue for copyright infringement if they haven't registered the work with the Copyright Office first. Now, you can register at any time during the life of the copyright, and that's a long time. It's the life of the author plus 70 years. So you've got a really long time. So, in theory, just based on that, you could wait until someone infringes your image and then register it. And once the registration has been granted by the Copyright Office, they take about 1 to 3 months, then you could go file suit. However, as you also said, Luke, timely registration, meaning registration before the infringement begins, or ideally before the images are published, which by definition
right,
will be before the infringement begins because no one has them yet. That carries extra muscle in the Copyright Act. If you register before you publish or before the infringement begins, you can ask the court for attorney's fees if you prevail in the case. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get them, but there's a significant chance you can, and that can be a lot of money in federal
right.
court. Attorney's fees are not a small thing.
No,
Also, really important is something called statutory damages, which means you, as the copyright owner, do not have to prove what your actual harm from the infringement was. You can just say to the court, they infringed my photos, I've proven that. And you can then say, pick from a range in the statute, and it is $750 to $30,000 per infringed image. So if someone has infringed 10 of your images, that's up to $300,000. And if you can show that the infringement was willful, then the award can go all the way up to $150,000 per infringed work. So 10 works times 150,000, up to 1.5 million. Now, not many people get that,
right,
but there's value also in registration, because if you just say to somebody who's used your work without permission, hey, you didn't have permission to do that, you're violating my rights, and I want you to compensate me. If you can show that you're organized, that you've registered your works, and let them know, and by the way, here's what the law says about what I can ask the court for and damages if you force this to go to court, that's going to get a lot of people's attention. You're showing you've got your stuff your ducks in a row, you're ready to go. And this is essentially a negotiation. You're essentially playing poker, really, with the infringer. They don't want to go to court, you don't want to go to court. The question is, where are you going to find the middle ground, more towards what you want, more towards what they want? If you've registered, you're showing aces up in a poker game rather than showing a 2 and a 7.
right. Absolutely.
So yeah, and to add on to that, we preach via Rights Click that the best time to register is before your work goes anywhere. For all the reasons Steve said, plus another fun one called publication, that is a definition in the law that confuses everybody, including experts. So we could talk about the meaning of publication if we want to here, but suffice to say, as Steve just mentioned, if you've just finished a project, you just finished shooting 500 photos or whatever for a client or for yourself, you've just done your editing, best time to register is right then and there, because you can guarantee nobody has it yet, and it's absolutely not published yet, for
Right.
sure. You don't have to ask the question. So your job just got a lot easier. Next piece about easier is, for example, we have photographers who do just that. They finish a project, they create a right-click project, load up their photographs, send them on to us. Steve mentioned some of the complications at the Copyright Office for photographers. They kind of give it and take it away. The Copyright Office allows photographers, and only photographers, to register hundreds of images on a single application, up to 750 photos per one application. No other kind of creator gets that level of, that volume on a single app. The other side of that, the take it away part, is that there are two steps that often put photographers off immediately. One is the requirement to create a spreadsheet in the Copyright Office format that lists all those titles in a certain way. That I've seen photographers say, I was fine right up until I got to spreadsheet, and then I quit because Excel, I'm not touching, which I don't blame them. But the good news is, if you go through right click, we actually take care of the spreadsheet for you. You don't have to touch that stuff. The other thing that the Copyright Office does is, let's say you've got 700 photographs in a group. You actually have to list those in the titles box that they have, and they have a character limit. And so you've got this weird game where you have to actually enter, okay, in this box, I'm going to give you 45 titles, and those characters in those 45 titles have to be fewer than 1995 characters.
Yep, exactly.
That's another one, because it's suddenly this puzzle that you have to work out with your titles, depending on how you've named your titles. And that's another one where photographers hit that wall and they say, no, I'm done. I don't care. I'm not going to register my work. We also take care of that at RightsClick. In RightsClick, all you have to do is upload your stuff to a project, organize it according to, you very quickly enter the basic data that's needed, send it to us, and we take care of the rest, and then update your project accordingly. So that's kind of, those are the two big barriers that we've seen. And then a slight variation on that is that you can register. One of the good things is you can register up to 750 published photographs on one app, or 750 unpublished photographs on one app. You do have to, you can't mix the two, rule number one. And rule number two is, with the published, you do have to at least enter an approximate date in a given month, because the Copyright Office wants at least that month. And so things have to be ordered according to which month and they all have to have been published in the same calendar year.
Right.
Again, it's not hugely complicated, and we've made it a little easier, but still another reason to just register when the project's done before they go anywhere, because then you don't have to. I've also seen that one where photographers go, oh yeah, I don't know, I published that in 1994. I don't remember when or where. And so that becomes its own homework project. So we're very much, all about trying to get that material organized and into RightsClick and registered as you go. And then, we understand back catalog can be sort of a little bit of a headache. We can talk a bit about that, but we recommend, identify the stuff in the back catalog that matters the most to you and make kind of a project out of that. But going forward, especially as you're building your portfolio, it's so much easier to do as the work.
Definitely.
Sorry, Luke, if I can just amplify the last point David made there, because it's so important. And this really does trip up a lot of photographers. If all the works are unpublished in the group that you're submitting, they can be from any time. They could be from 6 different shoots. They could be from 1994 and 2001 and 2017. Does not matter, as long as they're all yours and they're all unpublished. You're good to go. If they're published, they all have to be published in that particular group. And they all have to have been published in the same calendar year. So if you had some published in 2016, some published in 2018, some published 2019, those all have to be separate applications. And within each application, they have to be grouped by the month. So the January 2017 one's first, then the February, and then the March, and you get the idea. If you're submitting a group of unpublished, it's way simpler for everybody. Now, again, RightsClick does a lot of this work for you, but we still need the information. Like, you need to tell us, okay, is it published? If so, when? And if you, again, if you submit before they're published, you've made it easier on yourself.
Yeah, there's essentially two camps that y'all are describing: the images that are already out there that are unregistered, and the images now moving forward, working like right click into your business workflow, where the images would then be registered, and reduces a lot of confusion. And you know, being someone who has gone through a registration, I can tell you firsthand that if you're dealing with published images and you're dealing with many different clients in one given year, and you're having to do that all retroactively, it creates a large amount of confusion. And the amount of workload for determining date month of publication is considerable, because you do have to factor in that that statutory definition of what truly is publication in the age of the internet, in the age of social media, and truly what does it mean, can be incredibly confusing.
It is confusing. One other thing I'll note, if you, let's say in RightsClick, you created a group of unpublished and registered all those, but then, 4 months from now, and people ask this sometimes too, they say, oh, do I have to go back and tell the Copyright Office that it's now published? No, you don't. You don't have to change that status. Once
Right.
it's
That's a
registered,
great point.
registered for life, you don't have to change anything. But also for your records, you could actually go to that title within RightsClick on the individual title page, change its status to publish, and enter the publication date, so that
Yeah.
5 years from now, when you want to go back and look, oh, this one was published. It was still part of the same group that was all registered together, and they all share the registration number. But oh, look, that photograph was published on July 14th. I don't know why I picked Bastille Day. That was random.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great point for identifying when the image is first out there, and then dealing with potential infringements from when it first comes out and is essentially publicly available, and really ripe for infringement. Which is the great point about unpublished works. It's much easier to determine. It's much easier to deal with those images, I will say, than dealing with all the published images. Absolutely. And so, how much is it to register just from the Copyright Office? If we kind of glossed over that point.
For each application, the Copyright Office charges $55, and that's for any group of photographs, whether it's a group of 3 or a group of 725 or
Yep.
750, which is the max, $55.
Yep.
And let me emphasize, the Copyright Office fees are never, ever, ever refundable. So if they decide you made a mistake on your application and they write back and say reject, resubmit, it's another 55. Or they'll tell you if you want to appeal the rejection, that's $300 appeal fee. So who's going to do
They'll
that?
probably say no.
But so RightsClick, I know from talking to you, Luke, that PPA has estimated that for someone who's not already intimately familiar with the Copyright Office rules and process,
Yep.
it could easily take an hour to prepare a group of photos for registration, sort through the photos, figure out what's published, what's not published, and so on, and provide all the relevant information. RightsClick has that down to minutes, just 5 minutes, literally. You upload your photos, you give us the basic info about when they were created, your name and address and all contact information is already in there when you created your account, of course. And you answer a few simple questions about, are you the person to contact if the Copyright Office has questions, something like that. For that, it's a $15 processing fee on our side because we create the spreadsheets for you. We interact with the Copyright Office online system. You never have to touch it. And there's a monthly subscription fee. That's only $5.95 for PPA members. We have a special arrangement for PPA members.
15 for small groups, 30 for
Oh,
larger. Uh,
thank you, David. Thank you. Yes, for groups over
More work
100
when those
images.
groups get larger.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, for the larger groups over 100 images, it's that much more work, so it is a little bit extra processing fee. But still, you can save yourself easily an hour doing that. And if anyone got scared away from the discussion about what's published and what's not, let me add that RightsClick has a glossary that helps give photographers and anybody who's using RightsClick some guidance about how to figure that out. We can't make that decision for you, but we help you understand what the law says as best we can. And the other key thing here is the Supreme Court issued a decision just a few years ago that says if you did your best to figure out whether your works were published or unpublished, and you went ahead and submitted your application, if it turns out a court thinks, no, you probably got it wrong, unless they think you intentionally lied about it, the registration is still valid. And that shows how important registration is. A case went all the way to the Supreme Court over whether or not the group of works that were registered together were all published or all unpublished or mixed. And of course, it can't be mixed under Copyright Office rules. That went all the way to the Supreme Court. The copyright owner won, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, that's a great point. That was a pretty monumental Supreme Court decision as well. The that was one of the biggest, I think, complications that copyright holders ran into when pursuing copyright infringement cases, where the alleged infringer would be, um, let's say, strategic about how they attacked, sort of in turn the copyright holder in sort of the defense of their case. So then they would attack the registration, they would attack various other things to bolster their case. And so the registration, improperly registering published or unpublished images was one of the things that they would target. And so that was a very big Supreme Court decision for a lot of folks who do their own registrations and have to interact with these very complex legal definitions.
Yeah.
So that is a huge benefit, I will say. Another one is just the time factor as well. The instructional video on the Copyright Office's website for published and unpublished videos, collectively they're 33 minutes long. So it's about 15 minutes for each of those videos. So when the instructional video is longer than conceivably a registration through your system, I mean, I think that just speaks to how long and the registration process is through the Copyright Office, because of really antiquated software processes. The 1,995 character limit, having to upload the titles manually and having to interact with the spreadsheet is very labor intensive. And I will say, there are certain photographic workshops that they'll get together 10 photographers and then they'll pay one person just to register copyrights. And that right there is a perfect illustration of how complex the registration system is, and really how valuable registration is as well. Because why would 10 photographers to get together and then split the cost if it wasn't worthwhile in the end to protect their work. And so I think that's a testament to why registration is so important. But really, it only works for some folks because of how maybe deep the pockets are of the individual to sort of pass that registration off to an experienced attorney. But yeah, I think Rights Click really helps the average photographer, the layman, and I don't really use that in a derogatory term because I think I consider myself a layman in a lot of respects. But uh, it, it it really, I think, feeds a big need out there, which is expedited copyright registration that fits into the workflow of working photographers who are 1-2 person shops, mainly one person, where you have to do your marketing, you have to seek out other clients, you have to uh, work in your studio, clean the studio, set up lights and cameras, and then look for new equipment to get. And then when you add one more thing on top of that, which can result in hours of time each week just to register images, for a lot of photographers, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And 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 copyright registration, because it's required to access federal court or the CCB, it really should be accessible for everyone. So I really am happy that a company like yours exists to support hardworking photographers and deal with a lot of the sort of the bureaucratic nightmare, frankly, that they face when just trying to protect their work.
Thanks. You actually you put your finger right on it, on the very barriers that we identified, especially among folks like photographers, to design Rights Click. And if I may add something about things like cost.
Yeah.
One of the smartest things I ever heard a very experienced artist, a visual artist, say was build registration into the budget. If you can. I mean, obviously not every creator can, but especially if you're working for clients or you've got any kind of budget for a project you're working on, the cost of less than $100 to register several hundred photographs, when the value of any one infringement could be tens of thousands of dollars. Obviously, the math just makes sense. And you never know. And people say, well, I may not get infringed, or if I do, I won't go to court. You don't know. You can take a photograph tomorrow that 5 years from now is going to be infringed by somebody that not only do they enrage you in the way that they used your photograph, we see that all the time, but they have, they had every obligation to get permission, get a license. They didn't do it. And yeah, you actually do want to go after them for the maximum that you can, because they deserve it. They're a commercial entity, something that shouldn't have, somebody, and you don't know. And that $100 you spent to register a whole bunch of photographs next week, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, might pay off in a way that you did not even see. In fact, that very same artist just recently settled a case for a lot of money. It's a settlement, so I can't say how much exactly, but I have some idea. Because of registered illustrations he had from decades ago.
Yeah.
And misused by a publisher, a major publisher, and he had them dead to rights.
So, I'll add one other, because Luke, you talked about the group of photographers who got together and hired an attorney. One of the challenges with a system that's so complex is, sure, the lawyers know how to do it, but lawyers charge typically easily $200 or $300 an hour.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of a catch-22. Many independent creators are not willing to pay that much to have a registration application filed on their behalf, certainly not on a regular basis. You can't be paying, an extra $200 plus the Copyright Office fee every week to register images. That's not sustainable. From the lawyer's perspective, they don't want to do the work because they can be they know they're not going to get their usual rate for it. And so they'd rather be doing some different work that they can bill full rate for. The only way they do it in between is if they think you're a client who's going to bring them some litigation, which of course can be much more money for the lawyer. But if you're not, if you're just someone coming to them fresh and say, I've got a bunch of images I want to register, they're probably not going to want to do it. That's, RightsClick is a business, but it is a project of passion for both David and me. We have devoted our careers and our professional lives to supporting creators. And because we have seen from almost every perspective between the two of us how the copyright system is failing independent creators, we created RightsClick and we set the prices at levels that are affordable for creators, because we wouldn't be doing them any favor if we built a great tool but then priced it out of reach.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think that's a wonderful note to end on. I just want to thank Steve and David for joining us here today to, I think, really communicate the point that registration is important. It should be important to you as a professional photographer who's putting their work out there. And, I mean, your entire portfolio represents, it's your life's work. And, your life's work should be protected. It should be protected to the maximum extent by law. And I think that there are many advantages out there for photographers who register on a regular basis, and especially images that they're putting out there in the public. I just want to say thank you again, Steve and David. It's great to see you again. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors with RightsClick.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Always good to be with you, Luke.
Likewise.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you. Take care, everyone.